East side, yeah. And I know what I must do. Fight for the greater good. Yo, GamerNemy here, and today we talk about the Grand Master of Drift, the Wing Chun Master himself, Leroy Smith. Now, Leroy right now is considered to be one of the worst characters in the game, right? Big content creators and streamers like King J and the main man Sui consider Leroy as to be one of the worst characters in the game, and we're gonna talk about that. So, firstly, let's talk about why he's considered to be bad, and at the end of the video I will give my opinion on the character, so please watch until the end. But first of all, the Tekken 8 mechanics have affected Leroy in a sense, like in a massive sense, and we're gonna start with that first. So firstly, let's talk about his parries, right? So Leroy is centered around his parries. His classic parries, back 1+2, up 1, upward 1, right, back 2, up back 2, like he has a bunch of parries, and all these parries have been affected. So in this game, parries will all lose to grabs, right? For example, let's record our Leroy here to grab our ass. So it doesn't matter what kind of parry it is, should even an attack like down back 1+2, as long as it has a parry to its name, it will lose to throws, right? Asuka, Jun, Dragunov, Feng, all these characters lose to grabs. Like all their parries lose to grabs as well. It's not just Leroy, but this has affected Leroy the most because Leroy, like I said, is centered around parries. Even his hit mechanic has a parry centered around it. So for example, I'll use every single parry that Leroy has. Back 2. So you can see that white flash, right? The shing sound, right? That means the throw is unbreakable. So this is back 2, we will lose. Upward 1, sorry, it did it too early. Upward 1, we will lose. Down back 1+2, we will lose. Up back 1+2, we will lose. This is Hermit. Let's see, how can I get the Hermit 1? Okay. Oh, there we go. Hermit 1, we will lose as well. So as long as it's a parry, it's going to lose to throws, which is huge nerf for our boy Leroy. Because like I said, Leroy's parry game is so freaking strong in Tekken 7. It's so freaking strong. So this has affected him massively. You can't just spam parry anyhow anymore. So if you're a Leroy man that loves spamming back 2, please stop it. A good player that has matchup knowledge against Leroy is gonna spam throws. Like throws are so strong in this game, it's ridiculous. That's one of Leroy's biggest weaknesses in this game is being thrown. You have to be smart about how you use your parries. Secondly, stuff like hit burst and hit smash cannot be parried as well. So for example, into hit, right? So as you can see, nothing, right? You just can't parry this for the life of you. You can't. Now, I say this in a sense because in Tekken 7, you could parry a rage drive, bro. Right? It was so sick. You could make a hard read, boom, parry rage drive and get a punish. But in this game, hit burst, hit smash, you have to respect all those. You just can't parry them. You can't power crash through them. You have to respect them, which is a huge nerf in terms of Leroy, right? That's one aspect of how the Tekken 7 mechanics, Tekken 8 mechanics have affected Leroy. Now, one of the biggest nerfs right now to Leroy is he lost his OG down forward 1. Now, this makes sense like if you think about it, I'll talk about that later. But like in Tekken 7, he had down forward 1, which was -3, and down forward 1, which was I think -6. But now down forward 1 is -6 across the board, right? He has a high extension, which you mostly use during his hit mechanic, but like it's risky because it's mid-high and a very long high animation, right? So you have all the time in the world to duck, react, and punish. So having a -6 down forward 1 hurts him really bad. You can't be as oppressive as you were in Tekken 7, being in your opponent's face, right? You just can't be as good anymore. You throw out a down forward 2, and it's just not the same. -6 is not the same as -3. With -3, you could move around after down forward 1, but -6, you have to be cautious with how you move. You can't get clipped by a ton of stuff, frame advantage, of course. So it's not the same. That's not the same. Now, talk about how this makes sense, because I feel as though this was intentional. They tried to nerf Leroy in a sense that his in-your-face offense is not as oppressive as it was in Tekken 7, right? They made in a sense that if you throw out a down forward one, you're basically putting yourself at risk of losing a turn. You can't keep the pressure going. And like this kind of makes sense because Leroy in Tekken 7 is very oppressive in your face, right? He's basically a perfect character in your face. Counter it back 1+2, 12 frames if you press buttons. He has a back 1, 11 frames. Low hermit pressure. So in your face, best character in the game for sure. But that's been removed in Tekken 8. And this is why I say it makes sense. I think people are so used to Leroy being strong, but that now that he's not that strong, they're calling him weak. But anyway, I'll talk about this more later on in the video. In addition to his down forward one, I feel as though Leroy is also missing like that one mid, right? At this range, kind of like this range, right? Now, the best mid he has from this range is back 1+2. Don't get me wrong, this is a very good mid. Hit engager, -4, you know. But I feel as though he's missing that one good mid check. Something like forward 1+2, which he lost. So this was forward 1+2 in Tekken 7. Was a good mid check, knocked down. But now it's a power crush, -13. A good power crush, don't get me wrong, but like, it's gone. It's a power crush, it's unsafe. So you won't really spam it as much. The only other things you have a forward 4, right? Decent puts into hermit on hit, you get to continue your pressure. You have back 4, you know, which is good. Has always been good, don't get me wrong. Then he also has Obito, maybe at this range. Obito is like not that mid check, right? It's kind of like a mix-up thing you throw in your opponent's face. So at this range, you can't really like check your opponent and go for a strong mid that knocks down, right? That Lars forward 1+2. That's Steve rocket launcher. That's Asuka forward 3. Devil Jin forward 2. Jin forward 2, right? That Dragon of Right, he just doesn't have that. And I feel as though it was intentional as well, right? They're trying to force you to be smart with Leroy now, right? So like it's very difficult because at this range now you have like back 3 and down back 3. So people expect you to throw out these moves, but it's a low high, right? Low high. A high and a low. Both good moves, don't get me wrong. One of the top 5 moves of Leroy is really back 3. Back 3 is ridiculous, but like startup is a bit slow. But like, you're just missing that mid, bro. You're just missing that mid. He has running 3, but of course, running moves are very linear. He has down forward 4-3, but again, it's not a mid check, right? Kind of just like a poke. This is basically a poke, not that mid check. So it might be, you know, it just might be me, but I feel as though it's something that's missing from Leroy's kit. Just that mid. That mid. He's missing that. He's missing that so much, and you can feel it. And last but not least is his lows, right? His neutral lows have had a ton of damage nerfed from it, right? Leroy is now stance locked in Tekken 8. You deal a lot of damage with your lows when you're in hermit stance, like Hell Sweep, 3-4. What am I doing? 3-4, hermit 3-4, and hermit back 4, right? Stuff like down back 4 have been nerfed, right? 13 damage, now -4. Down to only 11 damage at -2, right? I think the only low they've kept is size 4, which is still a pretty good low. Down 3-4, damage has been nerfed, it's now 16, right? So yeah, he's been hit hard in terms of damage from his lows. At his stance lock, he has a new low, down back 3, but even this low is bad at only 13, sorry, at only 12, it's only bad in damage. At 12 damage, which is not that great, but it is +5 and leaves you in hermit, pretty good. A quick way to go into hermit, especially the range. Range is pretty good, right? It's a good low, one of his best lows, but of course the damage nerf. So again, his lows have been nerfed in terms of damage, so your stance locked when it comes to dealing damage from your lows. And lastly, let's talk about his hit mechanic. So now Leroy's hit mechanic, as I explained in my how to which character to pick or Leroy introduction guide, is his hit is pretty good. It is pretty scary because he can chip your ass, like just this alone. Look at that chip damage, right? Almost half health gone, right? So his hit mechanic is strong, don't get me wrong, but the only issue with his hit mechanic, or the only caveat, is most of the punches you use for his mechanic or for the chip damage are mostly highs or unsafe. 1+2 is a very strong high, 14 frame hit confirmable, you know, move that deals massive chip, but it's high. You have forward 3, 1+2, mid high -12, right? So it's risky. 1+2. a high and safe at -13. You have Hermit high step 1 plus 2, a high, and you have Hermit 1 plus 2, which is his best option, right? So as you can see, guys, they're all highs. Even down forward 1 plus 2, like we spoke about earlier, they are all high. So it's risky in a sense that they're all highs. When you're in hit, your opponent will expect you to throw these moves out. Like, you just have to. So as a Leroy main, you try your best to go into Hermit and use the mid, right? Because that's like the only mid cheap damage option that you have. So like I said, it's a caveat, right? It's not like Raven, where you can just throw out your clones because you're in hit, right? Or Devil Jin, upward 3 plus 4. Characters like Claudio, for example. You can't just throw out moves for the sake of throwing them out, like Asuka, because you're in hit. In the case of Leroy, you have to worry because they're highs. So you're putting yourself at risk, So it's a strong hit mechanic, but like I said, it has its issues. So now, do these issues make Leroy the worst character in the game, or one of the worst characters in the game? Honestly, I don't agree. Like I said earlier, I feel as though people have been so used to Leroy being strong in Tekken 7, that now that he's not as strong, people are calling him trash, right? I think he's maybe mid-tier, but not garbage, not trash, as what people are saying he is. I think that's an exaggeration. He still has damage, right? He's still ridiculous at the wall. His Hermit is still insane, right? His lows are still good despite the damage nerfs, right? Hermit pressure is still ridiculous, with one of the best mids in a stance you can ask for, right? So I don't think he's as bad as anyone is making him to be. I haven't had problems against top level players, honestly, in ranked as well, but I will keep playing him. Don't worry, Leroy remains. I will not abandon our boy. I still believe in him. I still think he's decent, he's good enough to get the job done. So don't you worry, guys. Leroy content coming up soon. So if you think Leroy is as bad as everyone thinks he is, check out this Steve video and just find out what people are saying about Steve.